Hi, this is Ralph Davis again on the lower roof of the Bainbridge Courthouse. It's the far west roof. This is a TPO membrane roof. Not sure of the date, probably the same date as the retrofit, out of probably 1999. I'm guessing it may have been done sooner. The membrane's showing quite a bit of age. One of the biggest problems I see that you've got from the lower roof is this hip bridge that you've got up in the upper roof. These slate tiles are falling, and you can see that they've actually fallen down. This here is just a piece of insulation tube from a AC unit, but the slate is actually falling off the roof from the roof edge above, and when they fall, they're actually creating puncture marks into the actual membrane roof. So you can see you've got, that's the only visible one I can find. This tile was laying over here. It hasn't been moved since it fell. I don't see any puncture marks. That's kind of some of the stuff going on. The flashing that was installed was really poorly done. Whoever did the original install of this roof did some no-nos here. In order for an installer to get that flashing to hold tight, he probably should have put a surface mount fastener in there. Instead, he decided just to caulk it in place. So to hold the flashing in place into his cut-in groove, he rolled up pieces of TPO and stuck it in there, and then he didn't even pull them out. They just kind of caulked over them. So what that is a rolled up chunk of TPO. And you say, well, certainly he didn't do that all the way down, but he did it everywhere you see. And the problem with that is that it just it gives a little opening everywhere. There's a piece of that. When that caulk dries, it kind of lets that water sit on top of that flashing and roll back in that wall. The other problem you've got is this brick. The brick on the wall really should be repointed. That's a very, very large expense. I know you probably don't want to get into that right now. It looks as though this wall has been waterproofed. The wall has got a sheen to it. You can kind of see these splotches and blemishes. Looks like a waterproofer's been put on that wall at some point, trying to stop the water from coming down and in the wall, when a lot of the problem could just simply be the way that flashing is installed around the actual perimeter. That caulking is getting old. If this was the roof put on in '99, that's about the span life of a good caulk sealant in South Georgia. If you get 15 years out of it, you're doing really good. Most of the caulks, Dow Corning 791 and whatnot, they last, they're warranted for 20 years. One of the other issues you've got going on, you've got a copper roof ledge up there, and the copper eyebrow, although they are pretty, it is actually dropping a lot of residue. So you have an inlay copper gutter on this portion of the building here, and then you have an actual copper skirt, and it goes all the way around. Well, copper drops a green residue, and that residue, if you stand back, you can see the discoloration in the membrane. Well, the copper is eating away at that membrane, and when that water ponds, you can see, so this whole entire section of roof, you can see it yellowing, and that's just because it's aging faster. And if you look very, very close, you can see some dry rotting and cracking in it. Not really good. Now, the other thing is your lightning protection is copper as well. You can do an aluminum lightning protection system, which would stop that, but the original install of these actual lightning protection was stuck directly down to the membrane. Well, most of these, you can see the deterioration in the membrane, the very, very small cracking around the membrane. You're starting to see it, and you can see that these pulling up are yanking on that membrane. So now the best practices is to put a pad or weld a patch down, and then actually put that bracket to an actual additional layer that's welded to the top, is what you see commonly. So if this roof were redone, that would be definitely what I would recommend. I'm going to have to recommend a full replace on this. There are a lot of spots in this membrane that have broken free. And when you install a TPO membrane roof, you take a probe, and I've got it marked here with some dirt. You take a probe on these seams, and once they're heat welded, you actually run a probe. This is not a knife, it's just a probe. You run it along the actual edge, and if that probe sinks into the membrane, it shows that you might have a problem or a spot where the membrane is loose, so water could be actually getting in here. There's another spot over here that I found that's pretty bad. If you look, you can see this wasn't caught during the initial welding process. This membrane lap has come up, excuse me, and I can almost get my probe all the way back in there. That weld is actually only 2 inches deep, so it's most likely leaking straight in there. So if that's occurring in multiple locations, as you can see in all of these seams, you could go and try to find each one of these spots and do the best to weld them. The problem is the age of the membrane is it's pretty dry and brittle. It wouldn't weld real well together. It's definitely a patch situation. If you want to go in, try to find those, you just reprobe all the seams very carefully. When you run across one, you clean it with xylene or a TPO membrane cleaner, and then you heat weld it back the best you can. You can use a sealant up underneath those, but it's you're buying time and buying life in the roof. It doesn't solve the copper residue dripping down onto the membrane problem. It doesn't solve your pointing of the brick problem. A lot of people feel like there isn't, they feel like brick is waterproof. That's not always the case. Brick actually acts like a sponge, and if you don't keep the water out of the brick, water and moisture actually ends up behind it. One of the things I did take note, last thing I want to mention, is that there is quite a bit of water getting behind this wall, because you can tell at the wicks, the wall is operating correctly, and that is, if you look at the wicks originally installed, there's quite a bit of water pouring out of these things during a wet rain. There's a through wall flashing here. You can see the edge of the copper through wall flashing in the wick, and you can see the marks on the wall where they're draining. So it is getting quite a bit of water coming down inside that wall for whatever reason, be it the roof up above or just moisture penetrating that brick. So it might be good to repoint the brick and seal the brick. The reason I say that is if you go ahead and do a new roof, it's hard for the roofer to warranty a roof when he's not sure that the water's coming from around those walls. But you can still do a new roof and probably solve 99% of your problems. But if you end up with water infiltration anywhere along these walls, it definitely could be from moisture penetrating the actual brick itself. So one last note, I noted that all of the windows are rotting out. They're wood framed. Now I realize that this is a commercial storefront window here, but your seals are actually falling out. And one of the other things is the copper, the residue is coming down on those windows, and that's the staining you see. All that copper is bled down and actually ate away at that aluminum frame. Copper and aluminum are natural enemies, of course. One recommendation is to fix the seal in that window. These wood windows all should probably be replaced. I would suggest, even though it's not part of the historical code, go back with a retrofit PVC framed thermal casement window. I don't know if anybody would accept doing something like that on a historic building, but just something to mention. Several of the windows in the juror's room, the frame is actually rotted completely through, and the wood has a hole in it, and the glass pane is just sitting there. So the single pane windows tend to condensate, the water runs down and rots out the window frames. You really need to do a thermal pane type window to stop that condensation from forming in the inside so bad. They probably have the air conditioning on at such a different level. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the Bainbridge Courthouse issues as far as the roof. If you have any additional questions, feel free to call or ask. I will send you a proposal under separate cover. Thank you.